Smith is currently in custody in the state of Illinois awaiting extradition back to Minnesota. The news that I'm telling you today does not mean that our investigation into this incident is over by any means. Our detectives are continuing to follow leads, conduct interviews, and painstakingly review additional evidence. With that said, I will not be able to provide any details beyond what I've already shared with you today. We did have to even wait, as I mentioned, this was August 24th, so it's been more than a week since that arrest was made. I want to acknowledge the great work of many people who have assisted us in getting to this point in this investigation. First and foremost, my staff, who have pushed nearly everything in their professional and personal lives aside to make sure that this investigation continued to move forward. The United States Marshal Service and the Decatur, Illinois Police Department, who did a wonderful job in safely getting a dangerous suspect into custody without any type of incident or any type of injury. The Hennepin County Sheriff's Office and the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. And lastly, we would all like to again thank the media and the public for continuing to share the details of this story. It helped generate nearly 400 tips from the public to date. You've been instrumental in helping us get to where we are today. As I mentioned already, I won't be able to provide any additional updates or comment on the investigation itself, as it could jeopardize the investigation and judicial process going forward, but I can try to take a couple questions. Before I do that, I just want to acknowledge again the Boughton family and thank them for their continued support as we work through this investigation. As they continue to grieve the loss of Jay, we want to request that you continue to respect their privacy as you've done so far. Any questions?
Chief Boughton, do you think that Jamal Smith was the shooter?
At this point, I'm not able to comment on that.
Probably not about the investigation. When did the family learn of this arrest?
The family was advised the day of the arrest.
And what kind of a response did you get from the family?
They were grateful. I would never use the word happy because there's nothing happy or great about the situation, but grateful and definitely a sense of relief from the family members that I spoke with personally on the phone, that they were just appreciative that there is some sort of closure at this point.
Chief, without getting into the specific details that you know you can touch on, can you give us some sense of what led you from here down to Illinois to this suspect?
I spoke to the roughly 1,500 hours of painstaking investigation work. This was truly a needle in a haystack. That our detectives, the public, primarily our detectives, they never stopped digging and working and knocking on doors and reviewing video after video after video. And finally, you get that little break every once in a while and it leads to something else and you're, off to that and knocking on more doors. And it really was, the hard work of our detectives that got us down to Illinois.
The last time we heard from your department was when the suspected vehicle was finally located. How instrumental was that?
That was instrumental in this case. That helped, just add another tidbit to the investigation. Absolutely.
What can you say? Can you give any other update about a possible motive? I know you've talked about previously it being a traffic disagreement or disturbance. Is there anything else you can update us about that?
So I can't comment on any additional updates, but I would repeat what I said before, is that there's nothing that led us to believe that this was a back and forth road rage. I know that that term's been used a few times. I have not used that term. I continue to not classify this as a road rage. It was really just a senseless act that happened in a brief moment when two vehicles were next to each other.
Meaning you don't think Boughton did anything to provoke?
I can't comment on that at this point, but I do know that the cars were next to each other for a very short amount of time, and this wasn't what I would ever classify as a road rage or back and forth.
You did call it a traffic altercation.
Yes.
And you still stand by those words?
Yes.
Okay.
Chief, was it a tip from the public that led you to Decatur, Illinois, and are you looking for more tips from the public?
I'm not going to comment on tips that led us there. We have had tips that have been that have helped our investigators. get us certain steps along in the investigation. If people do have tips, especially now with today's information about an arrest, if people have more information, we are continuing to encourage people to call, because as I mentioned, the investigation is not over at this point.
Can you say how soon charges will be filed?
I can't comment on that at this point.
Are you looking for more people?
I can't comment on that either, I'm sorry.
And you also talked about the reaction from the family when you made that phone call. What was it like for you when you were able to pick up the phone and make that call to them?
That was a bright moment in this, last 8 weeks. It's been a tough and tiring and exhausting 8 weeks. So yeah, it was nice to be able to have a good phone conversation with a family that has had nothing but bad news over the last 8 weeks. This doesn't do anything to bring Jay back, clearly, but I think it does help the family understand that they're not going to be wondering forever what happened or who was responsible for this.
Was he arrested on a warrant?
Yes, he was arrested on a warrant.
So there is a charge somewhere?
Yes, so Mr. Smith is being charged with second-degree murder.
In Huntington County?
Correct.
Okay. So there should be a charging document publicly available today?
At some point, there should be, yes.
But not yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Chief, obviously some of this other stuff is also public record, but can you tell us anything about what you know about your suspect in this case? Past criminal history?
I don't. I have not reviewed Mr. Smith's entire criminal history, but I do know he has one, just from some reports from our detectives, that he does have a criminal history, yes.
Did that impact how you approached making this arrest? Not that any of these are ever...
Yeah, just on the nature of this, you can never be too careful, and that's why we definitely worked in partnership with the United States Marshals Service and the Decatur, Illinois Police Department, who's familiar with that. Our detectives and our staff were not, really involved in the actual arrest because it's in a different state, but we partnered with them and definitely had some conversations before this was done, just based on the nature of this, this senseless crime.
Was he actively hiding? Do we know if he knew?
I don't know that.
Can you spell his first, middle, and last name?
Yes, let me grab it off of my my notes here. So, Jamal, first name is spelled Jamal. Middle name is Lindsay, Lindsey. Last name is Smith, Smith.
Is there a timeline for when he might be extradited to Minnesota?
I don't have a timeline. No.
Is there any federal involvement since you crossed state lines or anything like that, or is this all Hennepin County? I can't really comment at that point, or I can't comment on whether or not there is. At this point, there's not, though. Hennepin County's first-degree murder statute has a drive-by shooting part on it. Is that a possibility?
I can't comment on that at this point.
What was his connection to Illinois? Is he from there, or what can you say?
Mr. Smith's arrest data that we received from Illinois lists that he is a resident of Chicago, Illinois.
Was there any weapons confiscated with him that might tie him to it?
I can't comment on that at this point.
Can you talk at all about why he was here, if he was from Chicago?
I can't comment on that at this point. I apologize. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but truly, as I mentioned, this is still a very open and active investigation, and there will be a time that I would love to share more, but I can't offer many details at this point.
You talked about how this vehicle that was taken into custody was instrumental to the case, sounds like this, getting the suspect. Was the suspect connected to that vehicle?
The vehicle that we mentioned earlier, within the last month, is related to this case. I can't, I guess, get into too many details about how Mr. Smith is related to that vehicle, but locating that vehicle certainly provided information for our detectives to move in the direction and get to where we're at today.
What was your original thought? We can call it a needle in a haystack. Were your expectations low? And how difficult was that to deal with as you moved through this process?
So 8 weeks stood in front of many of you and other people in this very room. We really had some grainy traffic management camera footage, and that's all we had to go off of. Those first few days, we as staff spent hours in a room trying to figure out what type of vehicle this was. I mean, was it a Ford or a Chevy or, and that's really where we started. So there were some tough days for all of our staff, trying to figure out how we will get past, even just figuring out what type of vehicle it was. So yeah, it was a little discouraging early on, but as I've mentioned a few times, and I will continue to state, we have some of the best detectives and officers that work for the Plymouth Police Department, and they never stopped working on this case. They're exhausted, but also relieved that we're at a point that we are right now, and it's only because of their persistence and hard work that we got to this point.
I know you can't say too much on the details of the investigation, but more broadly, could you say, it seems like this was kind of your textbook digital forensic, start big and keep getting smaller. Can you speak to that at all? Because it seems like it's 8 weeks. It seems like a long time to some people, but a lot of these things take a while.
Yeah, this is a pretty I guess in my experience, a condensed timeline with the amount of evidence that we search through. A lot of that is video, some digital evidence, and there's still a lot more to go through. So this is not your CSI episode that we can't complete this investigation in 55 minutes, with commercial breaks. And the fact that, our detectives and staff have put, more than 1,500 hours into this case over the last 8 weeks, and there's still a lot of work to be done. It says a lot about the amount of work that it took to get through this. I actually asked if any of the detectives wanted to stand with us today, and they said no, they've got work to do. So they're still working on this as we speak. They're probably laughing right now upstairs.
You said that the Hennepin County complaint should be unsealed today?
I didn't say that. At some point, there will be a Hennepin County complaint. I don't know the timing of that, though.
And did you say timeline for when he'll be brought back himself?
We're still working on it. I didn't say a timeline. I don't know the timeline, but that's obviously in the works. All right. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Take care.